Hello, welcome back. Thank you, as always, for joining me. Let's jump right into the idea for discussion today, and that is there is nothing outside you. The end. We could end it right there and just let that idea, that lesson sink in. There is nothing outside you. And there isn't. So let's spend some time here considering what this actually means and how we find that this is true. Because it is. There is nothing outside you. One of the interesting things about the study and practice of A Course in Miracles is the simplicity of the teachings themselves. Very, very simple ideas. So why is it then that we find these ideas so hard, so difficult? Because we do find them hard and difficult. And there is an ego voice in all of us that says, yeah, it can't possibly be this simple. There's got to be more to it than just the statement, God is. That can't be all there is, right? And it's this voice that wants us to freak out because it's freaked out. It's the voice of the ego that panics and wants to add layer upon layer of analysis, over analysis, to the idea that God is. Only God is, and all else is illusion. There is nothing outside you. That's another one of these very simple ideas that we just can't accept because we're so conditioned to think that everything has to be so complicated that truth can't really be as simple as it proclaims to be. Oh, it is. We're just used to our own excess activity, our frustration, our endless attempts to manipulate and control illusion. The entire world, illusion, everything perishable, everything that transforms, shifts, or changes is illusion. So the simple truth that God is can induce a state of panic. And I hope that that's not the case for you, but it can happen because we're so conditioned to think that the physical body is our life, that our so-called individual lives are our lives of going off to work or sitting in front of the computer at home to work and make this idea called money so that we can continue to house the physical body, which appears to house us, or so we're taught. And so we come to think and believe, yet deep down we know that's actually not the case at all. There's much more to it than that. All of this, we complicate things ourselves. So it takes repetition. It does. As adult learners, we need repetition of ideas just such as this. There is nothing outside you. So let's start with the idea of our inner teacher, one that I reference all the time here, the Holy Spirit, our inner teacher. Now, If you were raised in a religious or spiritual tradition that talks about the Holy Spirit, there may have come a time where you thought, what is that exactly? Have you ever asked that question? Personally, I asked that question all of the time. I was raised, as some of you know, in not one, but two fundamentalist Christian traditions. And there was some talk. Well, I won't go so far as to say there was plenty of talk about the Holy Spirit. It was just sort of a mystery. And when I would ask, because I was always that kid in Sunday school, go figure, right? Here I am teaching a course in miracles. Yeah, that was by design. So I always asked, what is the Holy Spirit? And I never really got an answer that was satisfactory to me. And at no point in my journey did anyone ever say, the Holy Spirit is part of your mind. That never came out of any of the adults' mouths. No, through no fault of their own, of course. We're not taught that. But enter A Course in Miracles, which you're interested in, whether you're studying it and practicing it or not. Some of you are and have been doing it for a long time. Others may be brand new, and others may just be starting out. This message applies to each and every one of us. You'll hear in it exactly what you're meant to hear. When you hear it, know that it is your inner teacher speaking to you. It is the Holy Spirit. Now, you may call this inner teacher by any name you like. A name is simply a label. So call your inner teacher Jeff. Call your inner teacher Linda or Mike. Elvis. Doesn't matter. It's just a name. Your inner teacher, the Holy Spirit, is part of our mind, not outside us. The Holy Spirit is you. This is the part of our mind that speaks for God. It is known by many names here in A Course in Miracles, including the voice for God, which is perhaps the most common. The voice for God speaks to us of who we really are, and it is not an outside power. The Holy Spirit is not external. It's part of our mind that speaks to us constantly, 24/7, of who we are. We have only to listen and then act accordingly, of course. Because that's really where we learn in spirituality anyway, is in the doing. It is. It's in the practical application whereupon our experience shows us these teachings are true. We, in effect, prove it to ourselves. Want proof? Excellent. Prove it to yourself. You'll be glad you did. The Holy Spirit is not outside us. So let's extend this idea. Jesus is not outside us. We're not a physical body, so he didn't just die 2,000 years ago. He's very much alive. In fact, he dictated this course. Every person that appears to have come before us in time never was a physical body in the first place. We are not a physical body. Who, what, and where we are is unchanging. It's life itself and not death. Who we are is not extinguished. Now, we can make the mistake of believing that we're something that is extinguishable, frail, fragile, can barely stand the prick of a pin, really. has a limited shelf life of 80 to 90 calendar years, if we're lucky, and it quite possibly much less than that, as we all know. This is 80% water. It is not the Son of God, which is eternal. So the Holy Spirit's not outside of you. Jesus is not outside of you. Buddha is not outside of you. Your guide or guides, whatever you may call them, are not outside of you. God is not outside of you. Only God is. A very helpful idea from A Course in Miracles, one that I reference here all the time because it's directly relevant, is that ideas leave not their source. Thoughts, in other words, remain in the mind of the thinker. This course refers to each and every one of us as the thought of God. Thoughts remain in the mind of the thinker. We are also referred to as the extension of God. And understand, in extending, like extends like, love extends love. It does not extend hatred, blame, condemnation, and fear. It extends love. God extends himself. The Son of God, created by God, is the extension of God. And when we say we're one with God, we mean it. One with. He's the author, the creator. We're the Son of God. God has extended himself. This physical body is not who you are. So I know that you know who, what, and where you really are. Ideas leave not their source, remember, capital S. There is nothing outside you. So here in the world, this principle comes into play in a very practical manner, which we would do well to address. So let's do it. There's nothing outside of you. All of this world, everything that we see, from the physical body to other people's apparent physical bodies, to all the phenomena, mountains and oceans, buildings and rocks, paved highways, train tracks, and trees and flowers and clouds, all of this is in our mind. It's not outside you. Nothing is outside you. This is an idea that can be difficult to accept. And why wouldn't it be somewhat challenging, considering, I mean, really considering how we're conditioned to believe otherwise through absolutely no fault of our own at all. In fact, it's no one's fault. It's not about that. Just think of, we were conditioned by our parents, by our school system, by our governments and societies, by advertising. That's a big one, right? We've been conditioned in so many different ways to believe that the physical body is our life, and what passes for life here in the world, checking email, going to the bathroom, eating, sleeping, enduring a constant barrage of crap in order to earn this fanciful idea called money, which we need in this insane dream of ours, right? When we appear to be here, we don't have much choice based on our conditioning as to how we're raised to see this. It's simply not accurate. And Think about it. Your parents were raised by their parents and conditioned by their parents and their society at the time, and on and on and on and on and on. So it's just where we appear to find ourselves. And let me please emphasize appear to. Remember, ideas leave not their source. What we're doing is we're simply waking up to this fact. So to listen to a talking head, a pixelated image on your screen, which is what this is, after all, isn't it? To hear a talking head spout that there is nothing outside of you at all can be quite challenging to the ego. If you're freaked out, it's the ego that's freaked out. If you feel like you want to lash out at this talking head on your screen or your neighbor or someone else because this challenges you to the core, okay, no problem. It's the ego that wants to attack. The ego is our false sense of self that believes that this frail 80% water thing, communication device, is everything. It's you, and that everything that you appear to see is outside of you. It is not outside of you. Something that can be very helpful as a practical matter is to see that anything that goes on in your life, in your experience, that is not wholly and completely 100% joyous, really, anything that bothers you at all, anything that annoys you, that rubs you the wrong way, or that infuriates you, that makes you sad, that causes you to judge, blame, and condemn your neighbor whose behavior you don't agree with, and they look like an idiot on social media. We all know those people, don't we? Anything that is not wholly joyous is an opportunity for you to forgive. This thing that is upsetting you is going on in your own mind because there is nothing outside of you. We forgive what appears to be happening on the outside because that is only an appearance. It is symbolic of some deep, unconscious guilt, fear that's buried in your mind and is coming up so that you may forgive it and recognize that your brother is one with you. And we forgive what appears to be happening on the surface and release it to the Holy Spirit, to your inner teacher who's part of your mind. This is how we deal with and get rid of our deep unconscious guilt. You may ask, and rightly, guilt from what? Well, from the perceived separation from God. We're not separate from God. There is nothing outside you, remember. Including God. He's not outside of us. Not at all. Anything that is painful or not wholly joyous is going on in our mind. It's symbolic of this unconscious guilt. It's symbolic of some anxiety or fear. And we forgive and release it. Anything that's joyous here in the world, anything that's beautiful, is also symbolic because the world is a symbol of what's going on in our own mind. There's nothing outside of us. This world is not outside of us. So a beautiful sunset is symbolic of our own radiance as Christ, as the Christ, singular, the Son of God, the thought of God, the extension of God. It's symbolic of our own magnificence and radiance. A blooming flower, the same. A gorgeous walk on the beach with the ocean right next to you and the sound of the waves, symbolic of our limitlessness as Christ, and so on and so on. Everything we appear to see in the world to the body's eyes, to the body's senses, appears to be outside us. It's not outside us at all. It's all going on in our mind. So what is forgiveness but a happy dream? It is. It's flipping the script 180 degrees here while we appear to be here so that we may clarify our perception and see things as they really are, not the way we have made and fashioned them, which doesn't bring us happiness, does it? It's why you're on the spiritual path in the first place, because you've heard the voice of our inner teacher saying there's got to be more to it than your job. Of course there is. We all know this. That's why we're here. That's why you're here. It's what has us on the spiritual path in the first place. So there is nothing at all outside you. Everything that is not wholly joyous is an opportunity for forgiveness, the practical centerpiece of A Course in Miracles. It's what we do. It's how we change our mind. And this is a course in mind training, the goal of which is to have us flip the script and completely perceive things differently, 180 degrees, see them as they are rather than the way we have made them. Now, incidentally, when this happens, truth, which has never gone anywhere, dawns of itself in our mind. Truth dawns of itself when we have clarified our perception, when we have met the conditions of knowledge, of truth. It simply dawns of itself, and we simply know God. In other words, experience. God can be known, experienced. Even here in this dream, we can have glimpses, and perhaps you've had those. We can have them even if they only appear to happen for a split second. There is no separation of any kind. And we learn this under the guidance of our inner teacher, who is speaking to you right now. Now, what will you do with the message? Well, that's up to you. I'm fond of saying that spirituality is an adult endeavor, and isn't it though? It is. It is, because we take responsibility here for our own experience. You have more power than you could possibly imagine right now. You have only to see it and claim it. It's not power over others. There are no others. There is nothing outside of you. It is the power of choice and decision that you have in our mind, your mind, right here, right now, to choose the Holy Spirit instead of the ego, to choose love instead of fear. Choice is meaningful to us here on the path because we appear to be here with a choice between truth and illusion, between love and fear. So while this appears meaningful for us, and it is very meaningful for learning purposes, we choose, as often as we remember to do it, the strength of Christ. We choose love, we choose God, we choose the Holy Spirit, we choose truth, light, instead of the ego, illusion, fear, and darkness. That is the choice that we make in the present moment between exactly those two options. So we're invited to make that choice. Ultimately, there is only perfect oneness. God is. So there's nothing to forgive. There is no separate other, after all, so there's no one to transgress anyone else. So forgiveness is properly described here in A Course in Miracles as an illusion. because it is. However, the major difference is that this is the only illusion that leads toward truth. All the others keep us stuck. Forgiveness sets us free. So that is the one we're invited to practice, where we learn to see things as they really are. And the process of awakening can rightly be likened to the lifting of a veil, or of walking through a deep, dark bank of fog. When we begin to walk through it, you may get a little bit damp from the water vapor, but you come to realize its total insubstantiality. So my hope in wrapping up here today is that you take heart in the message that there's nothing outside you. And take that and go where your inner teacher directs you to go with that. And if this seems far out, yeah, no, not a problem. These simple statements of truth can seem incredibly far out when we're conditioned to believe the exact opposite. Expect that kind of mind-blowing surprise from time to time on the path. And this even happens, incidentally, if you've been studying and practicing this material for years, because you just don't know if today is going to be the moment where, boom, a light goes on. You have one of these moments. We call them aha moments, or deep revelatory moments, where you just get it. And if that happens for you today, that would be very cool indeed. It will happen at one point. We simply continue to show up here in the present moment and forgive. Show up and forgive. I forgive. Again and again. All right. So thank you, as always, for joining me here. I want to extend the invitation to you to subscribe if you have not yet. We've had a number of people subscribing recently, so welcome to all of you. Here's the subscription button here in the corner of your screen. Just go ahead and click on that arrow, and you'll be prompted to subscribe and join us. We'd love to have you. Questions and comments are always, always welcome here. So if you've got them, please feel welcome to leave them right here in the comment thread, and I will see them. Okay, so thank you as always for tuning in. I will talk to all of you again very soon.